Well, it's been a while since I did any sort of H5N1 update. So from March to June 2024, I was trying to regularly update whoever follows me, basically, anytime there was significant news on H5N1. And then in June, I was appointed via emergency basis as the interim state vet for Connecticut, and I did that until October, so I didn't want to do any updating during that time. Now, the kind of undercurrent of any update that I have put out this whole time has been basically not to panic, and I still feel that way. There have been some new things that have happened over the past few weeks that raise my cause or my threshold for concern. So I am more worried now than I was, half a year ago. However, that being said, it's still really important with things that are ongoing and developing like this that you don't jump to conclusions, that you verify the information that you're reading. There's so much bad information out there right now. But that's not what this is going to be about. But just know that there are heaps and mountains of really bad information. But find the correct information, stay abreast with that information as it develops, and use that information to make clear thinking, reasonable plans for yourself. So, probably one of the biggest things that's happened in the last few weeks was despite us having several dozen human cases of H5N1 in the United States, we finally had one that was severe, and then it progressed to, unfortunately, that patient passing away. So, that was our first human death in this country from H5N1, and that was significant. That was an older patient. That patient had double occupational risks. So, that was someone in contact with wild birds and with domestic poultry, and that patient had significant comorbidities. So what we know from that situation is that there was no person-to-person transmission still, which is great. So that patient did not transmit H5N1 to any other human around them. What we do know is that several viral mutations occurred in the H5N1 that patient had, which is not great news. So while the risk to the general public still remains low at this time, the risk for occupations related to poultry handling or dairy handling are higher. And the reason why a cross-species transmission to humans and a mutation in a human is concerning is because with high-path avian influenzas, the biggest threat for this to become a much bigger problem for public safety and people is when the virus decides to reassort. So the way that it is now is not threatening, but it is always on the threshold of reassorting and becoming a much more pathogenic problem for us. That's kind of why it seems often like public health officials sort of teeter between not being concerned enough and then all of a sudden hitting the gas and 100 miles per hour, because that's how this virus acts. So on the animal side in Connecticut, we still don't have any domestic poultry or livestock H5N1 cases. However, there is now an H5N1 detection in a commercial poultry flock in Vermont, which is really not that far away. Prior to that, the closest this had ever gotten to us in almost a year was Ohio. So geographically for me, that's an uncomfortable leap. The species that are going to suffer from this most significantly are going to be your poultry species and your cats or any other felid. So cats, for some reason, are experiencing the most profound consequences of this virus since the beginning, since March 2024. The epi-studies that have been done to figure this out have determined that cats are getting this faster and more severely because of their propensity to be on farms running around. Maybe they're outdoor only, maybe they're indoor outdoor, but their presence on dairy farms means that they're ingesting unpasteurized milk from the milk parlor floor or from the milk room, and they're also eating raw dead birds that are dying in the environment of the dairy farm. So the animal health takeaway here is that freezing is not going to kill the viral particles in meat or dairy. That's what we've been finding over the last few weeks in the cats that have gotten sick and died from H5N1. So meat really needs to be cooked and dairy really needs to be pasteurized if you're feeding those things to your cats and your dogs on purpose, and so on. I think one of the things to understand about this that I heard from some clients this morning that was surprising to them is this virus has been widespread for a while. We have found it in cats, dogs, coyotes, foxes, minks, ferrets, rats, mice, raccoons, goats, sheep, alpacas. We have found it in everything. So moving past the dietary implications of that, cats and chickens cats may have very severe neurological signs, but they're going to also suffer one of the higher mortality rates of all the species for H5N1. Chickens, it may move so fast that you may never notice that they're sick before the mortality starts occurring. One of the clinical signs could be a decrease in water consumption, but not everyone is noticing that before the fatalities occur. So in terms of what to look out for on your farm, what I've been telling my clients is just if there are barn cats or farm cats around, to please be observant of what's going on with them. They will be the first possible sign that something's wrong. So if you happen to find a dead cat on your farm, you should call the Department of Agriculture for further guidance. And that also goes for domestic poultry. If you have an acute poultry death, especially now, you should call the Department of Agriculture. If you have an acute death in a wild bird species, that's not a Department of Ag problem, that's a DEEP issue, so you report that to them. But the reason I'm concerned right now is that we had some mutations in that human patient, but it is here. I mean, Vermont is close enough, and we've had detections in wild birds, so it's kind of impending, but we never really kicked the 2022 HPAI outbreak. From the viral reassortment standpoint, my concerns are what happens when that HPAI meets the H5N1 on a multi-species farm. So that's what I want to put in people's heads. Again, it is not a reason to panic. It is just a way to stay informed, observant, to calculate risk, to use PPE, and just to stay ready.